Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending. The first of three seminars from BFSG. This month and next month. Today, being Authentic Happiness, I'm happy to introduce Melinda Dranfield today for a very different type of presentation that you're used to hearing from BFSG. This one focused on happiness instead of the normal investment related and Social Security and whatnot that you would typically get from us. This one, not even really being presented by BFSG. I'm here to only host and moderate for Melinda, monitor the chat box, moderate the Q&A for her, and launch some surveys for her. But the bulk of today's presentation, which should last approximately 60 minutes, and then we will take questions at the very end as well. I'm also taking questions throughout the presentation. So some housekeeping items at the very bottom of your Zoom screen. There is both a chat box and a Q&A box. And I would encourage all of you to have both of those open today. If you have questions throughout, please type them into the Q&A box. Depending on the question, we will try to answer it during the presentation. And if we're unable to, we will answer it at the very end of today's session. But also have the chat box open. That is different from our normal presentations that Melinda today is going to ask you to engage and type responses into the chat box from time to time. So you definitely want to have the chat box open so you can type in responses to her questions. With that, let me introduce Melinda Dranfield for some background on her before she kicks off the presentation.
All right. Thank you, Chad. Thank you for that warm introduction. I'm thrilled to be here with all of you and to get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is happiness. So I'm really thankful that Chad and Keith and Tina and the team at BFSG invited me here to be able to speak with all of you. A little bit about myself. I grew up in financial services and worked in firms just like BFSG, as well as most recently Prudential. I became a certified coach a few years ago and started to bring training just like this into the sales organization and the client service organization at Prudential. I fell in love with it so much that I decided to leave last year, right in the middle of a pandemic, to do a couple of things. One, to partner with a big company in India called Happitude, where our goal is to spread happiness and mindfulness across the globe, as well as to start my own business, which is called Breakthrough Performance Group. I work specifically in the corporate world mostly, as well as education, and I love to work with teams and organizations and individuals to help them to live happier, healthier lives, particularly during this challenging time. So I'm thrilled to be here today. I want to say that I admire all of you for showing up. And just like Chad said, I'm going to be asking you to engage with me because that's a big part of choosing happiness, is the type of social engagement that we can have even through vehicles like Zoom during times like this. And so it shows me, because you're here, that you still have some level of optimism, some level of hope that's left. My definition of optimism is this: it is the belief that your behavior matters. And so you believe that by participating in something like this and expanding your knowledge around this subject, that you have the opportunity to improve your life and how you're showing up, and probably the lives of your loved ones. So we often measure our lives based on how we feel, how happy I am. And yet we don't spend a lot of time and energy and learning dedicated to learning the knowledge and the skills and the strategies to be able to really master our emotions. But I'm here to tell you that that's possible. That's the journey that I've been on for the last 7 years. And that's what I aim to help you do today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just share with you some of my own story, and I'm going to share with you the biggest lessons that I've learned in cultivating happiness, as well as all of the juicy brain science behind it. All right, so we're going to launch a poll. Chad's going to launch the poll for me. And I want you guys to make sure to answer this poll. On a scale of 1 to 5, how happy do you consider yourself to be? How happy do you consider yourself to be? And I believe I see it in the chat, but he's also going to launch a poll.
So the poll should have just launched. I'll leave this up for about 20 seconds as we gather responses. And then I'll read off and share results with the group as well, so everybody can kind of see how the whole entire group responded.
The reason I asked this question is I think it's really good to be able to gauge where we're at, because it's our own view of how happy we are that frankly matters. But I also know that a lot of us like to see, well, where am I compared to my peer group? All right, so it looks like about 54% of you are moderately happy. Not surprising. We all love to come right there in the middle at the I'm okay, I'm good, I'm fine, right? That's what a 3 is, I do believe. 30% pretty happy there. 7% very happy. That's about normal. It usually comes in around 10%. And then on the other side, 1% unhappy and 7% falling on the lower end of the spectrum as well. All right, we'll go ahead to the next poll. Let's take a look at this one. This seems like a no-brainer, but surprisingly, it's not. How have your happiness levels changed in the past year? Do you believe you're less happy? Did you stay the same? Or are you one of those positive outliers and you're feeling a lot more happy as you head into 2021? How have those levels changed just in that past year? During this peak of pandemic, how were you?
So we still have responses coming in. I'll leave it up for about 5 seconds, and then I will close polling and share results with the group again.
Thank you, Chad.
Okay, closing polling now. And let me share results.
All right, again, not surprising. 44% are less happy, 34% stayed the same, and 22% feel more happier. And definitely, I like to say that we've all been in the same storm over the past year or so, but we're definitely not all in the same boat. And this pandemic and all the other things happening around this world have really impacted each of us uniquely and differently. So I'll share a little bit of data about this just so you can see how other people are doing. 70% of US workers say that this has been the most stressful time of their careers. So if you're one of those people that is feeling a lot more stress and angst, like we just saw in those survey results, you're not alone, right? So that's the good news. You're not alone. 54% feel exhausted at work each and every day. And so the cumulative toll the stress is having on us is impacting our sleep and our energy, right? I'm sure a lot of you are feeling that in your lives. And then 40% are experiencing burnout at work during the pandemic. That is something that employers really need to pay attention to. What that means is that you feel that your demands are exceeding your current capacity. And probably every Monday, probably every Tuesday and Wednesday, you're thinking, I don't know that I can do one more day here at work. And so that's burnout. And it's definitely a lot higher than those numbers used to be just a year ago. All right, so let's take a look. We have another fun survey, fun poll. I'll have Chad launch this one. What do you feel? And I believe we set it up where you can pick multiple answers if you'd like to. What would need to change to make you feel happier? More money, a better job, better relationships, a better partner, winning the lottery. I think that was Chad's suggestion. Spending time in person with family and friends, more sleep. Can this divisiveness just go away or the pandemic ends? What are those? Which of those things do you feel would make you feel happier?
Yep, so it's launched again. Votes are coming in. I'll leave it up for about probably 15 more seconds. And the lottery one is just because we just had what, $1 million or $1 billion Powerball almost again. I think Powerball and Super Lotto both almost got to $1 billion.
Yeah.
But I think we all know that most people that win the lottery end up less happy. So
that is truth. I think the funny thing though is that in lots of surveys we ask this question, and a lot of people, that is the top answer. Well, if we just win the lottery, then I'll feel happier, although we know it's statistically not true.
Yep. So let me close polling, share results.
All right, let's check it out.
I love this answer. This is great.
It is, Chad, right? Isn't that what we all want? That 68% to be able to spend more time with our family and friends again. It's definitely something that we've been missing out. The holidays just weren't the same this year without our loved ones. Another high one is the politics, divisiveness end. Yes. And the pandemic ending. That is not a big surprise. And then we also have a better relationship, better partner. Obviously, relationship stress is one of the big stressors, as well as things like politics. Not surprising after the year that we've had, and even the start to 2021 was definitely tough. All right, so this one was a little bit of a trick question, so we are going to come back to this a little bit later. You'll see some of these answers resurface. All right.
And we had a cool one come into the chat box too, which is, what about more time in a day? Like, I just feel like I don't have enough.
Oh, Heidi, don't we wish? Don't we wish we could add more time? But I will tell you, if I ever do another session with you, we're going to have a discussion about time versus energy and how it's not more hours we necessarily need, though we would love that. But what if we could get more energy to be able to take on our days? That changes everything in and of itself. And I'll hit that a little bit today. But yes, more time. We all wish for that one. So I did this in a recent workshop. I asked the same question. I just wanted to show you guys their answers. It's a similar size group and they had similar answers. The pandemic over, be with my family again, more money, sleep, etc. So the thing is this, there are many things that we believe will make us happier. But over the next hour, I'm going to challenge you to think about things a little bit differently. And I'm going to ask you to think about this. What would it take for me to be a little bit happier today? Like right now, what could I do? What if I stopped waiting for someday when all of these things change? Because we know that changing our circumstances takes a lot of time, but changing ourselves, changing our habits, our rituals, and how we show up, that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, so I want to engage you guys in the chat box now, and I want you to tell me, what does happiness mean to you? What is your definition of happiness? Or maybe even, how do you feel when you're happy? Sometimes it's easier to quantify or qualify how it is that we feel when we're happier. There are no wrong or right answers, because if you were to Google this right now, you'd find about 1,500 to 2,000 probably different answers for what is happiness. And so go ahead, relax or no stress. Thank you. Having peace of mind and heart, balance of mental, emotional, and physical fitness, not being mad, no worries, enjoying life and times as they are, mental clarity, wake up in the morning, living in the moment. There's a lot of great answers coming in here. Stress-free and light, accomplished and loved. Love that word. Inner peace. I hear inner peace a lot, and we're going to talk about alignment later, and that goes along with that. Being able to laugh. Right? It's been hard lately to laugh and to maybe even be as happy as we desire, because it feels kind of, some people say it feels a little bit, are we being a little bit not as understanding of others when we put a claim and show up happy right now? And many of the studies are showing that that's exactly what we need to do in times like this. So I'm seeing happiness as a choice, good work-life balance, inner peace, being humorous, tolerance, absolutely. Being more positive and not hung up on the details. Having our basic needs met, absolutely. And so the reason I ask you is this, and there are no wrong or right answers, but the most critical thing that you need to understand is, what is happiness for you? And if you've said some feelings, like for example, when someone tells me that inner peace is what they're looking for, then my answer to you is, well, what is it that brings you inner peace? What are the things that you can do on a daily, weekly basis right now to bring that sense of inner peace? And so you really have to understand what it means to you. That being said, I will share some of my definitions around it, just based on the way that I perceive happiness to be. So at its most basic form, happiness is an emotion, and there are 6 basic emotions: sad, mad, scared, peaceful, powerful, and joyful. And from these 6 emotions stems every other emotion. So we can take a look at a chart. Probably won't be able to see my little eye chart here. But what this is just a listing. You'll see some of the core emotions right here in the middle, and all the other emotions that stem out from that. For example, frustration and distant stem from being mad. Content and relaxed actually stem from being peaceful. In its most basic form, I believe that emotions are just vibrations in your body. They give you clues. They give you clues for what it is that you need to be paying attention to. Some people would look at this chart and say, well, these ones are the bad emotions and these ones are the good ones. I disagree. I believe that all emotions are valuable, and we'll keep talking about that as I go on to the next slide. So what I'm hoping that you're seeing here is that positive to negative emotion, it's about 50-50. And this is true for most people on any given day, week, year, or over their lifetime. And when you accept the 50-50, then those negative emotions start to lose their power over you. When we villainize negative emotions and even negative circumstances as bad, we tend to push them away. We suppress them and they become worse than they are. They feel worse inside than when we just express them and when we just accept and embrace that, yeah, I'm feeling, sad today. I'm feeling lonely today. Totally normal to feel these emotions. You are human, and that's part of being human. Pain, challenges, discomfort, it's part of being human. Tony Robbins said that unless you're in the grave, you're going to have problems. That's part of life. And so here's the thing. When I ask almost anyone, what do you want for your kids? Give me a yes if you have any children out there that are in their late teenage years or early 20s. If you have kids that are this age and someone asks you, what do you want for your kids at that age? There's some people that say, well, I want them to be successful. I want them to be healthy. You know what I hear the most? I just want them to be happy at that age because it's such a challenging age for our youth, particularly right now. So a better goal, I believe, is that we become more authentic and fully human, and to embrace the fact that we're not happy all of the time. Because when we don't, we start to look at everyone else's lives. This is the social media effect, right? Chad and I talked about this yesterday. And we start to judge ourselves and we wonder, well, what's wrong with me? Why am I not as happy as Bill or Susie or Timmy? And that comparison makes us feel even more negative. But when we embrace the fact that it's 50-50, when we embrace the fact that, feeling sadness, feeling discomfort, feeling challenged, feeling fear are things that actually are good for us, right? If I were to take you in time 1 or 2 years from now, and you were to look back on this period in your life, you'd probably look back on it and say, I never want to go through that again. However, that was a huge period of growth and learning for me, a huge period of growth and learning from my business. And so all the things, all the challenging things that happen for us, are they really happening to us, or could we look at it as they're happening for us, for our growth? Maybe they're happening so that we can empathize and connect better with people as they go through challenges in their lives. So I want you to look at these two pictures. And again, in the chat box, what I'd love for you to do is type in, what emotion do you think these people are experiencing? Do you think they're sad, mad, scared, joyful, peaceful, or powerful? Which one? I see stress, pain, and fear, determined, anger, struggle, power, exhausted, powerful, joyful, power, sad, distraught, relief, happy, accomplished, pain, distress, fear, anger. Okay, so you guys are all over the place, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I think a lot of you may be a runner. You can probably recognize the face of these two individuals. If you are a runner, you know that these two runners are likely near the finish line after hours of pushing their bodies and after months and maybe years of training. I myself am a half marathon runner. I've had this look before. And what you know is that likely they are feeling pain and exhaustion, yet they're feeling this immense, immeasurable joy and yes, power in this moment. So why is that? First of all, there's this really cool things that we as humans can do. And that's, we have the ability to feel joy and pain in the exact same space. It's pretty remarkable. During COVID, I've had this underlying sense of joy and peace. I worked hard to get there. I wasn't there 7 years ago. I'll share that with you in a minute. And yet at times I've been scared. I've been mad, been sad, been worried. I've been frustrated. I've been angry, just like all of you. We can learn to hold these emotions in the same space. So the reason I shared this with you is that it does tie to the way that I like to define happiness. I believe that growth or progress equals happiness. And I believe that when you are progressing towards becoming a better version of yourself, even in the smallest of ways, when you're progressing is when you feel happy. And I want to make sure that you recognize that the reason those runners felt such joy was because they were growing. And we want to make sure that we really differentiate this word happiness from pleasure. Now, I'm all about pleasure as well. I believe there's a lot of space in my life for pleasure and happiness, but they are different. So, pleasure gives us these fleeting, momentary, positive feelings. And I believe that we should seek to create these moments of pleasure in our lives. We probably already know what is it that brings us these hits of pleasure. It makes life more fun. It makes it more enjoyable. However, the difference about happiness is that you can experience a happiness through the ups and the downs of life, even when things are not pleasurable. I want you to think about training for a big physical race or something like that, like a bike ride or a marathon. I want you to think about going after a big goal, like getting your master's or your college degree, or even having a child. And all of those things have stress and work and many challenges. They're not easy, they're not pleasurable, and yet we're happy because of the growth. It's easy for us to start to confuse hard things with being unhappy, but it's actually quite the opposite. All right, so what we're going to do next, and take a look. When I throw this chart up, congrats, Anna, on your master's. That is awesome. That's a great feeling. So look at this chart super fast. Don't read it too much, and just tell me, what zone do you think you're in or that you've been over the past year? So just type in avoidance, growth, survival, or anxiety. Where do you feel you've been over the past year? Be honest. I see a big mix here: survival, growth, anxiety, survival. And frankly, this is a trick question too. It can change all day. You may be in that survival zone at 3 p.m., for example, and you're usually in that growth zone right when you get into the office, right at 9 a.m., just not on a Monday. And so you may oscillate between all four of these as well. And that's what I'm kind of seeing here. It looks like a good mix. All right. So let's talk a little bit about this chart. So on this side, we have on the left side, positive emotions daily. Are you experiencing positive emotions daily? Yes or no? And across the bottom, what's your future vision like? Do you have a strong future vision of where you're going, who you're becoming, what your dreams and goals are, and how to kind of get there? Or is your future vision pretty low right now, meaning you're kind of mired and stuck in the day-to-day grind of your life? And so a lot of people in 2020 were stuck in this survival zone, and it's no wonder, because our emotions were definitely more negative than positive. And at the same time, every single thing that was on our calendar that we had to look forward to started getting canceled, right? Things are still getting canceled. And so this notion of future vision just went out the door. It's really challenging to have a future vision when everything gets canceled and there is so much uncertainty. And so many people were stuck in survival, and they still are. Let's talk about the avoidance zone right here. This is a fun one. And I have a lot of friends that have been in this zone throughout the pandemic. Do I have any people that have been avoiding feeling those real emotions and instead have been feeling their extra time with over drinking, overeating, over exercising, over Netflixing, over indulging, so that we don't have to feel those negative emotions? So yeah, we're good. We feel those positive emotions because we're over indulging. We feel happy enough on the surface, but we're not making a lot of forward progress on those goals. So let's talk about the anxiety zone. I have a lot of high performers that constantly, pandemic or not, that fall into this zone. So in this zone, there's these negative emotions on a more kind of frequent basis throughout the day, as well as a really strong future vision. So much so, in fact, that you can never enjoy the present moment. You're always just projecting that, well, when I accomplish X, when I accomplish Z, then I'll be happy. When this pandemic is over, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be able to reach the goals of my business. And we find it challenging to be present right here and to experience joy in this moment. And in this moment right here, this is the present moment. That's all you got. Anything outside of this is in the past or in the future. And the problem is that this is where connection happens. This is where growth happens. This is where success comes from. It's from what we're doing in this moment, not the moments way out there in the future. In this phase, you may also overwork because you want to control and ensure that tomorrow is going to be brighter than today. So let's talk about the growth zone then. In this, you have a nice little balance between that future vision as well as the present. And the reason why is that you feel positive right now. You're totally engaged and enthralled with what you're doing. You're enjoying life right now and you're growing. You're growing because you have that future vision around who you are becoming and what are your long-term goals. You keep that future vision burning bright. And at the same time, you give your all and you engage in your present right here. And you're probably doing the things to help you to grow. You're engaging in the types of habits that you know help you to optimize your positive emotions, habits that we'll talk about later. And so in this zone of growth, you're always learning, you're always growing. And even when you have a bad moment, a bad day, a bad week, you go to yourself, what can I learn from that? What could I do differently next week? That's the difference. So the reason I share all of this with you is that my goal in this session today, and my goal anytime I talk with a crew like yours here today, is to help you to avoid this situation that I found myself in when I first started working remote as a leader for Prudential 6 years ago. So I was one of the first remote directors and then VPs that's more of like a home office employee that was working remote. At the time, I was out in Colorado, and most of my employees were in Connecticut, Newark, New York, Chicago, etc. And I had jumped into a bigger job that I had come out of when I was at the advisor firm I was at. And so I was really overwhelmed, but I let that overtake the things that matter most to me. And I found myself tethered to my desk. You may feel this way. Many of you that work from home, you know, one of the stats I saw recently is that 37% of US workers feel like they're working more than ever now that they're working remote. And so when I was tethered to that desk of mine, eating, going to the bathroom, moving my body, talking to a loved one, all of those things felt like a burden. And even when I wasn't at my desk at night and on the weekend, I was still there mentally. I was unable to disconnect. I was definitely in that anxiety zone a lot of the time. So let me share with you my wake-up call. You know, this was a challenging moment. I walked in and my 10-year-old son was down on his knees and he was praying. And the words he said were, "Please help my mom to be happy." And that was it. That was that moment. It was, I can hear it clearly in my mind. That was the moment that I said, something's got to change. This is not acceptable. I've got to figure out how I can do both and how I can do it well. Luckily, right around that time, I was blessed to run into the field of positive psychology and the works of the greats like Martin Seligman, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, and Shawn Achor. If I have any other positive psychology fans out there, go ahead and let me know. I may even have some researchers or scientists on the field on the phone call as well. So this set me down. That was the original thing that set me down the path that I'm on today. It was an instant though. And so what I'm going to share with you guys are the top 2 biggest lessons that I learned coming out of this time of immense study, self-reflection, and personal experience with trial and error. So the 2 lessons that I learned is that number 1, happiness is a choice. And number 2, happiness is fueled through holistic growth. I've talked about that word growth many times. As I've implemented these 2 lessons into my life, I've been able to make a shift in my mind. I'm now more positive and optimistic, you know, just on an everyday basis. And with that lens, I've been able to create a life that I love, one where I have this joy and this peace throughout the journey. And so I hope that I'm a sign of hope for you guys. If you're struggling with this, or if you have loved ones that are struggling with this, I hope you know that there is hope. There are things that you can do today, starting today, that will help you to make this change in your life, or maybe with your loved ones, if they're open to it. So why does this matter in the sense of business? So I love this slide right here. What we have found is that happiness ignites success. It's not the other way around. I work with a lot of successful people, and I'm really quick before I work with someone to help them understand my definition of success, because it's a little different. For me, success is all about being able to achieve your goals and to grow vigorously while maintaining your health, your happiness, and your relationships. Because without that, is that really success? But what we found from a business perspective is that happiness ignites success in every area of your life. We found that a positive, engaged brain, that's the greatest competitive advantage that you can have in the workplace, in the type of world that we live in today. I think that's particularly true in a year like 2021. I know that for me, I worked with the sales force. So things like greater sales success, more productivity, you know, fewer fatigue symptoms. I know there's a lot of you out there that are struggling with sleep probably. And so these are the impacts of feeling happier and being more optimistic. So let's talk about this first big lesson that I learned. Happiness is a choice. And I love my little parentheses. That requires effort at times. And I'll tell you this, when I first heard the phrase, happiness is a choice, that's kind of what it sounded like to me. I was literally like, well, maybe it's a choice for these people over here that are always, chasing rainbows and unicorns. But, they don't know my story. They don't know me. They don't understand. There's no way that happiness is just a choice. That's ridiculous. But, I'm one of those people. I listen well, I learn well, and I learn from some of the best out there. And then I put it into work so that I could experience myself. And so what the researchers have found is this: we are not just our genes and our circumstances. And that was a big part of my story. But the thing is this: most people do not fight their genes and their environment. However, decades of research in the field of positive psychology has shown that if you start to shift your mindset and your habits, that you can actually start to trump your genes and your environment. And I'm going to share some of that with you next. Now, I had created some really powerful stories about why I couldn't be happy. The first one is, well, I'm just like my family and they're all depressed, frankly. And the next one was this whole little story around, well, when my husband's airline gets out of bankruptcy, then I'll be happy. When we have more money, then I'll be happy. When I get a new job, then I'll be happy. When I get a raise, then I'll be happy. When I earn that trip for work, then I'll be happy. When I lose 15 pounds, when I move closer to family. I even had something in there about when I live near trees. I kid you not. My list grew bigger by the day. When I, then I'll be happy sometime way out there in the future when my circumstances are perfect, when I had achieved that next great goal, or when some of my problems had magically gone away. You could actually say that happiness was in my imagination, because thoughts about a future that doesn't exist yet is just that. It's your imagination. Also, every time I would reach one of these goals or one of these things would go away in my life that was more negative, yes, I'd feel some joy and pleasure in that moment. And I would get these dopamine hits. It feels good, right? It feels good to achieve these things. But then it was just right on to the next big goal. I wanted more and more of these hits. And the issue is that over time, you start to become numb to those type of dopamine hits that we get more from like these pleasure moments. And so here's the big news. Anyone that's on Peloton who's been listening to Year of Yes, I'll tell you this. I've been having this quote up for about 4 years now, but I'm constantly hearing this as I've been in some spin classes, as I've been in some meditations with Shonda Rhimes and others. You are the creator and editor of your stories. These were stories. They were true. Yeah, there was some truth in there, but they weren't truth with a capital T. And here's the deal. If you change your story, you change the course of your life forever. And as Shonda says, you hold the pen. You hold the pen. It's up to you. So let's take a look at the brain science behind the most common stories around happiness. Sonia Lyubomirsky, she found this. She said that the variance of happiness in any group depends on your genetics, your circumstances, and your choices. We do have what's called a genetic set point for happiness. Some people are just born happier than others. You've surely met them. My husband is one of them. He's a Pollyanna. That's what I call him. And I love it. So blessed to have a Pollyanna in my life. But what they found is that genetics, it's real. It does actually account for about 50% of that set point. Your circumstances, this was the interesting one. I thought circumstances would have a much larger impact on it, but it doesn't. They said if they know everything about you, they can only predict your happiness levels by about 10%. And then this is the beautiful part, this beautiful 40% conscious choice. This is the space where you and I have more individual room to create happiness in our lives. And once I learned this, it was like, bam, this like light bulb just went off. And I said, oh my goodness, I really don't have to be at the effect of my genes, my circumstances. I control 40%. For me, I mean, 40%, that's a pretty good amount. And that gave me new beliefs, shift in my beliefs. I said, when you change your stories, you change your life. It always starts with that shift in beliefs. And this was the research I needed to be able to understand that. All right, so let me introduce you to a very special friend of mine. This is Kristin Seifert. She's a friend that I met through an organization called No Barriers. She's a mom of 5, and about 6 years ago, she got sepsis. What you'll notice, she has really good prosthetics, like really expensive ones, but her arms, these are prosthetic arms, and she has a prosthetic leg as well. She almost died. And her youngest child was about 1 year old at the time. And I remember her telling me, she said, the only thing I wanted to be able to do, the very first task that I desired to be able to do for myself was to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for my 1-year-old. And I thought, oh, that's a mom's heart, right? She's going, you just took away my ability to serve, to give, to take care of my family. It's extremely difficult for Kristin. But here's what she told me. And here's the cool thing. She is a biker, a runner, an all-around athlete, and she owns her own business. She's a brilliant therapist. She does amazing work with other people that are experiencing really difficult trials in their lives. And she taught me this big lesson. It's okay to have a pity party from time to time. It's okay. You just got to put a curfew on that. And I love that. She said, you know, you have to make sure that your emotions aren't running you. You get to choose how you show up. So Kristin, she's just this joy and this light to be around in my life. And she has taught me that it's not about our circumstances. It really is about our mindset around these things. We have that ability to make that choice. And it's a choice we have to make every single day. All right, so here's one final quote on this. Happiness is a choice, not a result. Nothing will make you happy unless you choose to be happy. No person will make you happy unless you decide to be happy. I'm going to state this right here. If you are putting it on your spouse or your significant other to make you happy, stop it. It's not possible. No one can make you happy. Only you can do that. And that is true the other way around. If someone's putting it on you to make them happy, it's not possible. Happiness is an individual choice that is influenced by others. But at the end of the day, your happiness will not come to you. It can only come from you. And that last sentence is really important. Happiness doesn't come to you. However, your daily habits, your strategies, all of those types of things, they are a vote for the person that you want your future self to be. Anyone out there reading James Clear's Atomic Habits? This is what he talks about. He says that we become what we repeatedly do. We become our habits. And so if you want to be happier and more optimistic, start by taking a look at your daily habits. Happiness is a choice, but it does require intentional effort on our part. And that's what we're going to talk about next. All right, so Chad, before I go on, I just want to make sure, are there any questions that I might need to answer right now?
We do not have any questions yet, but as a reminder to the group, please type any questions you might have into the Q&A box. If you do type them into the chat box, I will try to find them, but every time Melinda asks everybody to post something, it gets lost like 100 messages deep in the chat box. So if you have a question 100% you would like us to address, I do have one on the side that I'll ask at the very end no matter what.
Okay.
Please type it into the Q&A box so we can make sure to address those questions.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Chad. All right, so the second biggest lesson I learned is that your happiness is fueled through holistic growth. Happiness comes through growth, and what I've come to realize is that we can either boost or block our happiness based on our focused attention and growth across 6 core areas, 4 that are internal to us, and then 2 that are external. These are the 6 areas: spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, social, and environmental. It's important to realize just how interrelated that these items are. I want you to think about, when you lose a night of sleep, what happens? You can type it in the chat if you'd like to, but what happens when you lose a night of sleep? Does it just impact your physical energy, which is where it falls? Or how do you show up emotionally? I mean, are you positive? How do you show up mentally? Are you focused? How do you show up spiritually? Are you connected to your values? How about socially? How engaged are you with your loved ones or your coworkers? So I'm seeing some irritable, grumpy, diminishes in all areas. I wake up with a headache, foggy, crabby, etc. Right? Yeah. So the main thing there is to recognize that it's very interrelated. So I can never talk about happiness and emotional well-being in this little bubble, because every aspect of our well-being definitely impacts that. Everything I'm going to share with you from a habits perspective is probably something you've heard before. But here's the big thing: knowing is not the same thing as doing. And so all of the things I'm going to share, they're all seemingly small. And I don't want you to try and do all of them. I'm going to ask you as I'm going through this, and I'm going to have a question and a commitment at the end. And I want you to be thinking about what is just one of these that I could apply in my life for the next 30 days. Remember what I said: every action, even these small, simple actions, are a vote for who you're becoming. All right, so one of my favorite quotes and one of my other favorite authors is Gretchen Rubin. And she says this: you have to act the way you want to feel. And so I want you to think about, how is it that I want to feel on a daily basis? I don't think we ask ourselves that question. It's a question I ask myself every single day. I have a high performance planner by Brendon Burchard. And that's one of the things I consider is, how do I want to feel, and what are the things I need to do to feel more of that today? If you want to feel happier, you have to do the things that make you feel happier. If you want more energy, you have to do the things that give you more energy. These things, they don't just magically happen. So right now, I want you to type in the chat box, what daily habits do you currently have that optimize your well-being or that maybe make you feel happier in some way? All right, I see taking my dogs on walks, morning walks, walking, singing. I love it. A lot of pet lovers out there. Man, have you guys heard about how many adoptions there have been during this pandemic? It's been crazy. Certain cities, you can't even get a dog. Prayer, making my bed, coffee, morning kiss to my wife, living in gratitude, dance, guitar, reading scripture, prayer, cooking, talking to friends, playing with my dog, eating with my husband, me time, school, drinking water, prayers, walking, reading, cooking, game night. All right, who wants to teach the class? I think I'm out, Chad. I think this crew knows exactly what they need to do to improve their happiness levels. And it sounds like they're already doing it. And so if you take nothing else from me, what I'm going to tell you to do is more of this. If this is what makes you feel happier, do more of this. And on the hard days, don't skip these things. Do more of them, double down on them. So here's the 6 habits that we're going to talk about today, the 6 strategies. There's one in each area, and I'm not going to dig into this, but the biggest thing I learned is that happiness is a habit, it's a skill set, it's a work ethic, it's something you can get better at. And as we implement these small changes into our lives, we start to optimize our positive emotions each day. And we start to build what I call new emotional patterns. We actually start to change our emotional state. And we're going to talk about that right at the end. And so, like I said, just pick one strategy. So the first thing I want to do is ask you this question. This is always a fun one. We're about to feel really good as we read these right now. But what is one thing you're thankful for? Just one thing. Type it in the chat box. Family, job, family, health, family, job, a supporting spouse, job, family, being alive. Amen. Family, working from home, independence, kids, grateful for this life. Kids, family, health, family, healthy, intelligence, jobs. Yes, having God in my life, rent control apartment, and job, family. Yes. So the reason I'm asking you this, oh, Dorothy, I'm so happy to hear that. I can't share that because that was sent just to panelists. Faith, family, job, but it had to do with her health. Good, close friends, having a job, family, etc. Right? And so what I want to say, sobriety. Yes, what a blessing is that. I have a sister who was about 4 years sober, and that has blessed all of our lives. So the reason I had you do this is we did notice there were a lot of different things here, but there were some patterns that we started to see. And as I share this habit, which is to cultivate gratitude, I really want you to pay attention to what I'm going to ask you to do if this is the one that you choose. Gratitude, if you were to look at every research study on happiness, gratitude's going to pop up time and time again. This is one of the biggest game changers in my own life. I am now the most grateful person you will ever meet, to the point of annoyance for people around me. And so what I'll tell you is that I like to use the GLAD technique. You can also just write down or journal 3 things that you're thankful for every single day. Either way that you do it, if you're using the GLAD technique, and I will be sending you guys a 4-page worksheet on this technique, but it's just to write down every single day, one thing I'm grateful for, one thing I learned, one thing I accomplished, and one moment of delight. A moment of delight is just something like a sunrise, a beautiful walk in nature, a conversation with a loved one. But the trick is this, whether you do this technique or writing in a gratitude journal with just a few things that you're thankful for, you have to capture different things every single day for 30 days. Here's the reason why. We have become experts at scanning the world for our stressors, our problems, our threats, everything that we need to fix. That's the fight or flight part of our brain trying to protect us. It is its main job. But because of that, we've gotten really bad at being able to see the positive in situations and in people and throughout our day. And so we have to retrain our brain to start to unconsciously scan the world for the positive things around us. When I first heard this, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Really? That works? Yes, it works. I would say for me, within about 12 days, I started to feel the impact from this simple habit. So gratitude is key. There's a lot of research on it, just like I said. And I think this is one of the big ones for me is the law of attention. What you give attention to, the thoughts you give attention to are the ones that grow the most. So are you giving equal attention to your positive, grateful type of thoughts that you're giving to all the negative thoughts that you have during the day? Probably not, right? And so you have to make it more intentional for a while. All right. Strategy number 2, mindfulness. How many people do I have out there? You can give me a yes in the box if you want, that are already practicing mindfulness on a daily basis. I'm going to give you the most basic version. All I want you to do, I see some yeses out there. That's great. I'm going to simplify this. For 1, 2, or 3 minutes a day, you choose, sit still, observe your breath, and just focus on it. I was the biggest skeptic ever when it came to mindfulness. I thought, well, I pray. Why do I need to have mindfulness or meditation? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. What I'll tell you, 2 totally different things, totally different. Both have benefits. And if you're just getting started, I really love the Calm app, Headspace, Peloton meditation, or Simply Being if you're looking for something free. So here are some of the benefits to mindfulness. Better focus. You start to notice when your mind is drifting and you just bring it back to what we call that anchor, which is your breath. Now, if you're a parent, this is the biggest tip I'll give you. I used to be a yeller. I'm going to admit, this is my 20s. I had my babies young. And I remember just getting so angry when they would start to like beat each other up or something like that, right? And I would go yell at them. That ceased when I started meditating. And so it was creating space. It creates this beautiful space between your emotions and your actions, slowing you down before you act. Stress reduction, calmness, better sleep, and it actually lowers your blood pressure. Serotonin, which is the mood stabilizer, it's one of the hormones, is actually released when you meditate. So what we're going to do for 1 minute, we're going to practice this. I'm going to ask you right now, I'm going to join you to sit back and relax. And for just 1 minute, I post these on social media every so often. And we're going to do 1 minute of breathing. You can close your eyes or keep them open. Just breathe. That's it. All right. How did that feel? You guys can you believe that was only 1 minute? Didn't that feel a little longer than that? Great. Some people said very difficult. Great. It can be difficult when we first start to just focus on the breathing. One of the things that it does is that it just brings this sense of calm and peace. And like I said, whenever things get really crazy, we can always bring ourselves back to this base of our breath. It's very centering. All right. So the third strategy is to nurture relationships. And I'm going to work quickly through this, but this is another question I ask myself every morning. What is one kind or thoughtful act that I can do today? One kind or thoughtful thing that I can do. Some days it might be as simple as sending someone a text, and that's the simple option that I gave you here. Just text message one person, praise them, thank them. Also, it could be something like, dropping off treats with a neighbor. It could be a note that goes into my son's lunchbox. But I try to think about how can I nurture one relationship. What this does is it creates this virtuous cycle of positivity. It creates deeper social connection, and it reminds you that your behavior matters. Anytime, particularly right now during this pandemic, that you can make someone else feel seen and heard and valued, you're actually going to feel the most joy out of that. They're going to feel good too, but you're going to feel great. So you can do this. If you want to, you can go ahead and send a text now to one person. I'll keep going, but all you have to do, if you want to practice this strategy, all you have to do is take your phone and send a 2-sentence little text to one person, thanking or praising them for something, anything, and just see how it feels. And what you're going to notice is you'll probably get a text back as well later on with them thanking or praising you, but they don't know about the 2-sentence rule. So it might even be a lot longer. All right. So why social connection? There was one and only one characteristic that distinguished the happiest 10% around the world from everyone else. And it was the strength of these social relationships. Study after study after study shows that deep social connection with 2 to 3 people is what creates a happy, healthy, successful life. All right, so strategy number 4, you got to move your body. You have to move your body. So Chad, go ahead and stand up. And anyone that wants to, go ahead. You can stand up. Oh, not Chad. Sorry. Chad has yes, that was not kind of me. Chad has a back issue today. He does not. He is exempt. So
I have a herniated disc. I had an MRI today, but
that's right. That was not kind of me.
I'm still smiling and authentically happy.
That's right. Chad has put on a smile today, guys, to be here with us. So maybe we need to give him a thank you in the chat box. But what I want to tell you is that I invite you guys to stand up while I'm going through strategy number 4. This is one of the easiest ways to shift your emotions. Do you notice my energy is already higher? You can also do this through your chair. You can stretch your body. Oh, look at all those thank yous. Yes, we love Chad. He's the best. But moving your body, it literally changes your mind. It releases endorphins. It lowers the stress hormone of cortisol. It's very critical. All right. So here's the deal. Consult with a physician first before you start any type of movement or exercise routine. Just like I should have told Chad, consult with your doctor first. But here's the deal. Do the type of exercise you enjoy. Some exercise is better than none. If you have 1 minute, do 1 minute. If you have 5 minutes, do 5 minutes. But just get your body moving. Get your body moving more throughout the day as well. Get up just like I just did. Walk around during your conference calls, but move your body. It is the quickest intervention to shift your energy, shift your mind, and shift your behaviors. So the mood benefits of just 20 minutes of exercise can last for 12 hours. I want you to think about the word emotion. The main word, motion. Motion's the main word. Your emotions like to express themselves, and here's something really cool. It doesn't have to be verbally. Your family will thank you for that one. Instead, you can actually express those emotions through movement. How many of you feel better after you go for a run or a bike ride or even have a dance party in the kitchen with your kids? Do you feel better? It's that simple. All right, strategy number 5, we have 2 more. Spend 5 to 15 minutes per day engaged in activities that help you connect to your purpose. Purpose is basic. We don't have a lot of time to go into this, but basically, we all know pretty much, why do you exist as a human? What do you stand for? What makes your life worth living? What legacy do you want to leave behind when you're 85 years old, when you're in the rocking chair with the grandkids, maybe all around you? What do you want people to say about you? What do you want that legacy to be, right? Who do you want to be? What type of individual, what types of values do you honor in your life? And so what we have found, and someone mentioned that they wanted to feel inner peace and that's what happiness was to them. That's really comes down to this purpose and alignment to purpose. Am I living my purpose and my values within the scope of my workday? This is spiritual well-being. Spiritual well-being is all about alignment. Who do you want to be and how do we integrate it within your day? So for some people, this looks different. If you know one way that you connect to purpose daily, go ahead and put it in the chat box. I'll say I saw some of the answers earlier, I believe, but if there's something you do to connect with purpose, let everyone on here know. It might spark some ideas for them. And the last one, well, let me talk. I'm going to skip through this, but aligned living, all that means is that when your direction, purpose, and values are in alignment with your actions. We just talked about this. All right. And strategy number 6, I love this one. You guys saw my local beach. That was the meditation I did there. I'm always adding in nature meditations. I'm blessed to live in a beautiful place. For those of you in California, I'm sure that's a beautiful place as well. As anywhere we live, we can find beauty, right? But embrace the great outdoors. Spend 5 to 15 minutes outside every day. Be present. Maybe leave your phone at home unless you promise to just use it as a camera so that you can savor those moments that you find. And just look for beauty and awe. Look for that moment of delight as you're outside. You could even stack some of your habits. Maybe while you're taking your walk, that's also your movement for the day. Maybe you're connecting with loved ones. Maybe you bring a loved one along with you. So why do we do these things? We do these strategies to help to start to rewire our brain. I told you that our brain is trained to look for all the negative. We have to rewire it. It's called neuroplasticity. And these daily habits, what they do is they help us to start to scan the world for more of the good, more of the positive, more of those opportunities. And guess what? I think I missed a lot of opportunities in my life. Things that I never saw, good that I never saw in other people either, because I was so mired in the negative before. You have the ability to rewire your brain. It's pretty awesome. I've seen it in my life. I've seen it in the life of my clients as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share one of my all-time favorite videos. And I want you to notice in this video, you're going to notice all the 6 strategies in the flow of this young man's day. pay attention, see how he's implementing this, and also what's the impact of just one positive person.
เขาจะได้อะไรถ้าเขาทำแบบนี้ทุกวันเขาจะไม่ได้อะไรเลยไม่ได้รวยขึ้นไม่ได้ออกทีวีไม่มีใครรู้จักไม่ได้มีชื่อเสียงที่มากขึ้นเพราะสิ่งที่เขาได้คือได้แค่ความรู้สึกได้เห็นความสุขได้เข้าใจได้ความรักได้ในสิ่งที่เงินซื้อไม่ได้ได้โลกที่สวยงามกว่าเดิมในชีวิตคุณอะไรคือสิ่งที่คุณต้องการมากที่สุด
All right. I love this video because it really does show the impact of just one positive, optimistic person, the impact you can have just within your life, within your world. And this gentleman, this young man, yeah, he doesn't get richer. He doesn't get more famous, which I know is the goal of, my millennials that I have in my family, but he feels that positive emotions. He witnesses, experiences happiness. He feels the love and he receives what money can't buy. All right. So in conclusion, I will share the video link. I'm going to have to go, I'll find it, but that will go out when Chad sends out a package later this week. I love it too. I tell you what, I cry every time I watch it. And I'm like, really, I've been watching this video for 7 years, but every single time it gets me. So in conclusion, happiness becomes a choice as you intentionally fuel your growth by adopting daily strategies that help you optimize those positive emotions that we talked about and that keep you progressing in even the smallest of ways towards becoming your best self, whatever that best self is. The more we're growing, the more we're progressing, the happier that we feel from the inside and the more energy, the more momentum that we have to put towards our biggest goals, our biggest dreams, and most important, that we have towards putting towards the people in our lives that matter the most, including ourselves. So I love this quote. The older we get, the more we look back and realize that external circumstances, they don't really matter. They don't determine our happiness. We matter. We determine our happiness. You and I, we're in charge of our happiness. I'll conclude with my own story, and then we're going to do one last poll. My story is a work in progress. This is my beautiful family. This is Tyler. This was the son that was praying for me just about 6-7 years ago, and now he's 16. And so what I'll say is that my story is a work in progress because I'm a work in progress. Happiness is a way of travel. It's not that final destination somewhere out there in the future. Don't waste your life waiting for life to be perfect so that you can be happy. You get to make that choice right now. You get to make that choice today. I can say that after this period of time, I am happy. This light that comes from within, sometimes it just shines more abundantly than it did 7 years ago. I considered myself to be chronically unhappy. And by doing these little things, making these little shifts just one at a time, I was able to shift the trajectory of my life and the life of my loved ones. I'm thankful for that prayer that came 7 years ago. It reminded me of my why. It reminded me of what matters. It reminded me of who I want to become. So that's my story. I hope you found it helpful to get to hear some of my biggest lessons. This is just my personal story tied in with all the brain science that I can attribute to my own knowledge and learning. But what are you guys going to do? Which one? I hope you guys will pick just one strategy. If you want to, you can also invite your family members to join in the fun, your kids. Some of these are a great thing to do with your families, to get them moving more, to get them cultivating gratitude around the dinner table. I see a G, all of the above. And Chad's going to launch a survey, I do believe, where you can pick one.
Yeah, I'm trying to, but it's failing. So in the meantime, if all of you would like to just paste it into the chat box, that would be awesome. Yeah, please go ahead and type it in the chat box. I'd love to hear what you're going to do. I see some of you saying all of the above. Yeah, that's the route I went. I was desperate when I first started, and I put them all into practice, and I journaled the whole experience. I have a book out there somewhere. I journaled the entire experience. B and D, don't waste your life waiting to be happy, all of the above. I see a bunch of gratitude, a bunch of moving your body, mindfulness, all of the above, practicing mindfulness, all of the above. I see a lot of gratitude out there as well. Great. You guys are on your way. I love that earlier you guys kind of knew what you need to do. Well, maybe you just picked up one extra little thing to add in there. So this is how you can get in touch with me. And in addition, Chad's going to send out my information as part of a bigger package that includes some materials. I have a summary deck of my slides. If you want to scan this, you may be able to do so. I'll also put the link in the chat box. No, it won't let me. So you can join my Thrive 360 community. I only send emails once or twice a month, but it's a good way to stay in touch and to hear about other free programs that I'm doing, like this one where you may be able to participate. Also, there is, I do one-to-one coaching, group coaching as well, virtual workshops, you name it. But I'm happy to come meet with you guys as well with your organizations or different things. But I just really appreciate Chad and the team at BFSG. They are, I believe, some of the first in our business to go down this direction with their clients and with their participants. They are definitely very forward thinking, and they're really aware of what the real needs are right now. So thank you, Chad, for having me here today. And thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Melinda. And for all of you, I did just post in the chat box. I know many people need to drop off. We've crossed the 60-minute mark, and maybe in the middle of your workday. We did put a link to a 1 to 2 minute survey if you're willing to let us know what you thought of today's content, as well as future topics you might be interested in hearing. It's a little bit different survey than what we've usually used, where we put additional topics that are always investment and economics related. And this one's not the case, in that we're looking to see your feedback on this kind of health and wellness and authentic happiness type of presentation. Think more soft skills, and whether it was worth your time, whether you liked it, etc. I do have a number of actual questions in the chat box or in the Q&A box. The first two, though, I think, as Melinda said, we will have a replay link available coming out tomorrow from BFSG. And also part of the email will be a link to a summarized version of Melinda's slides, as well as a couple other resources she's going to send me That will be the only mass email you get from BFSG, thanking you for participation, but then also providing all the links in case you would like some of that additional content or to sign up for Melinda's newsletter. With that, let me get to our first question. The first question, Melinda, as you already know, came in via email. I'd like to ask in case the participant has to drop off.
Sure.
Is you're thinking about someone who may have a child who has lost, a young child who has lost a friend in their early education levels. Any advice or tips that you can give for them to share with their children, to kind of help them through that difficult time?
Sure. And first of all, I just want to say that I'm really sorry and so sad to hear about this. It's a difficult, challenging time that we're in right now. And many of us, we have been losing loved ones and close friends. And it's particularly challenging when something like this happens to one of our kids, right? Because we just want our kids to be happy. And I think that's the disclaimer and kind of the advice I would give is that as much as we want our kids to be happy, I want you to remember what I talked about that 50-50 and how challenges and pain are part of this life. And so the best thing that you can really do as a parent is to listen and allow them to grieve and allow them to express that sadness. You may even see some anger and some changes in their behavior. Just be aware of it. Listen to them, acknowledge them, validate them. How you validate someone is just say, if your child's name is Allison or Bill, Allison, it's understandable that you're feeling immense grief right now. I mean, one of your close friends passed away. And so I think it's just important that we acknowledge their pain. I think if there are opportunities for grief counseling through the school, I highly recommend that. I believe that in challenging times like today, we can't be cautious enough with making sure that our kids have the mental health resources that they need to deal with some of these bigger, unexpected stressors like the death of a friend, and then also social connection. How can you quickly, I know it's COVID, so it may be a challenge, but are there ways that this child could connect with his friends, either socially distanced in person or via Zoom, where they have an opportunity to just be kids and connect? Because I will say this, connection during times of trial, during times of challenging times in your life, that's one of the most important things you can do right now is to connect. And the same is true when you go through a major life stressor like the death of a friend or a loved one.
Yeah, thanks, Melinda. Hopefully that answered your question. I'm not saying a name, it came via email to keep that confidential. So the next question I have for you, Melinda, is do you have any suggestions for the best method to handle anger management in someone's life?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's really going to be test and error, trial and error on that one, right? You kind of have to figure out what works for you. I'll say that the mindfulness meditation really did help me. Someone asked me which app I used that was free. It was Simply Being. I also believe that when you're triggered, it's a good time to step away. You know what it feels like when you get that first trigger of anger or frustration. You might feel the frustration or your body tensing. We tend to, you can feel it in your body. When you feel it in your body, walk away, step away, if that's helpful, so that you're able to breathe. Take a deep breath. You don't even have to practice meditation. Breathe. If you just take 3 deep breaths, it's going to re-engage. So what happens is when we get triggered, that fight or flight part goes off and this emotion floods into our bloodstream. Cortisol might get released, right? And so that's why we're, once that cortisol is released into your bloodstream, that's that fight or flight, the mechanism, the fight or flight goes off. And what you want to do is try to re-engage what's called your parasympathetic nervous system. You re-engage that system in a few ways: moving your body, taking deep breaths. That can re-engage that system. And that's the system that gets you back into your thinking brain, which is your neocortex. And you definitely want to be responding. Do you want to react or respond? You react under fight or flight. And you're reacting because these chemicals, these hormones have taken over, right? They've flooded into your bloodstream. And so that's why we typically tend to then react in anger. But if you just pause and breathe and maybe step away for a moment, it's going to re-engage that neocortex where you can step back and then ask yourself questions. Because when you ask yourself questions, it then again re-engages that higher part of your brain. And so what you want to ask are things like, how do I want to feel right now? How do I want to respond? What story am I telling myself right now? Is it true? Am I sure it's true? Is it truth with a capital T? Truth as in, I can prove this in a court of law. But regardless of whether it's true or truth, what do I want to feel right now? Do I want to go down this lane again? Because what's happening is that we have what's called an emotional state. And if we have neural pathways that are wired for anger, and that can be a thing that they kind of become wired for anger, the best thing you can do is start to break that up by stopping the action. So you might still feel the anger, but could you pause and then stop the action, which might be what's coming out of your mouth to the other person? Or could you just stop it right there? And the more you stop it at the action before you get to action, the better you're going to be able to start to get rid of that neural pathway that is really primed for anger. So that's my suggestion. Really simple.
Yep, great answer. Just stop. Three deep breaths is what I'm hearing there, and think about it first. So the next question, and I'm assuming there's probably a ton of these, but do you have any good book suggestions for somebody that wants to dive a little bit deeper into some of these topics you've discussed?
Yeah, book suggestions. I love The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. That's kind of where I started. You can also listen in for his TED Talk. I love anything by Martin Seligman. So Martin Seligman is actually the father of positive psychology. And Chad, I can send you a book list, a reading list. Atomic Habits, if you're looking for how to change your behavior, you could get Atomic Habits, and that's just good for any type of shift or change that you're trying to make in your life. I would say, anything, I think Gretchen, I said her name before, Gretchen, she wrote a book about happiness as well. And I'm going to send you the name of that book. I'm pulling a blank right now. But yeah, Gretchen Rubin, if you look at her book, she has great books in the field of positive psychology as well. But frankly, some of the stuff I go old school Covey. I love anything by Stephen Covey as well. And a lot of his principles tie into a lot of what we're going to take about, especially with conscious choice and choosing how you show up, choosing how you lead, choosing the energy that you want to bring to your day, to your life, to the world.
So it sounds like we got a couple other people that would love to get a book list. If you want to include that when you send me the notes, and I'll publish that out when we send the email tomorrow. Sure.
I'll make a note for myself to book list.
And then, so the next one we have, I'm going to summarize this.
Okay.
If somebody has a friend that's in the avoidance zone, they like to buy a lot of things. Yeah, I know that. At least for me, every time I buy something on Amazon, when it shows up, I get happy for like 20 minutes. It kind of wears off, right? But I think a lot of people get in this zone where they just want to keep buying things, and it's instant gratification. Is there anything that you would suggest that this person can say to this loved one that might help them get out of this type of habit? I think it probably goes back to social media too. Everybody they see is posting something that's always happy, and the reality is that people that post the most happy things are honestly probably the most unhappy people on social media. And they're only posting happy moments, so it makes it seem like they're really happy. Okay, what can you recommend somebody do to help this loved one?
Sure. So I think this is a really challenging one. I told you that I'm married to Pollyanna, right? The male version. And he tried for years, and he shared every tip, every technique, everything with me. And I think this is one of the most important things, is that when we have family members that are struggling, I hate to say this, but the only thing you can do is love them. Until someone wants to make a change in their life, they're not going to make a change in their life. I said there's a difference between knowing and doing. This person probably already knows that there's a problem here, and they're choosing not to do right now. And so it is one of those really tricky things with whether you step in. Now, with children, I have stepped in and taught my children many, many things. But when it comes to other adults, I have found my efforts to be fruitless personally, with trying to help others desire to change. They have to have that desire within themselves. Now, here's the other deal. I believe you can be a positive outlier for this person, just like the gentleman that you saw in the video. I believe that the more that you model happiness, the more that you model optimism, the more that you model good behaviors. There may be a book on this that may be a little bit more subtle that you could share with them. I'm not really sure. But that being said, I think you have to model positive emotions. You have to model, working with Chad and his team about your future financial vision. This is obviously tied to financial wellness, right? How is it going to impact them not only today financially, but into the future? I don't know that I can say that, Chad. I don't think it's supposed to make recommendations. But that being said, just strike that. Just strike that. All I'm saying is that it may be one of those things that if it's a spouse or something like that, you may be able to work with a financial planner or someone out there that could help you kind of create a budget and kind of look at the reality. Because I think a lot of times when we're in this avoidance zone and when we're doing a behavior like over shopping or whatever it may be, we're not super aware of the impact it's having on our finances, both the short-term savings as well as our long-term. And so I definitely think that is, one way that you could address it. But like I said, the best thing you can do is model that positivity, model the things that you're doing to plan for your future, model how you're dealing with these challenging times in your life, right? So I would say that's my best tip. It's really hard to change other adults. They really have to desire it for themselves.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melinda. That was the last question. We did just get another chat in the chat box. Somebody did say Gretchen Rubin.
Yes. Thank you.
From Heidi, and then Cindy, some recommended books, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry and Qualified. So Melinda will send me a recommended book list. I'll include that in our email tomorrow. It'll include a link to summarized version of the slides. It'll include an on-demand replay link if you would like to either rewatch this presentation or share it with anybody else. It is open to anybody to view, as well as the book list of at least a few recommended books that Melinda might have for everybody. Again, thank you everybody for attending our presentation today. Please let us know what you thought in the survey. I know a number of people have already posted their results in there, so we can look forward to future content. Melinda, any closing remarks?
Just a big thank you. Thank you guys for being here. I can't believe 73 of you stayed on for this long. So thank you. If you have any additional questions, you can send them to Chad, send them to me, and I'm happy to give you guys my best response that I can and to get back to you. Take care, my friends, and be well. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones, and have a beautiful, blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melinda.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.